as a taxpayer, I'm concerned about how this reform is going to affect me and how it affects me now in the status of immigration.
Okay, okay. I think that's a fair question. We met while we were in Washington, D.C. on this last trip, and we'll be going again soon. We met with Senators Flake, Senator McCain. We met with Congressman Grijalva. We met with Congressman Ed Pastor's staff. We met briefly with a staff member from Congressman Gosar's office. He would not come out to see us. And we met with, briefly, I think we met with some of Matt Salmon's staff, but nor would he would not take time to see us as well. And I think their main concern is the same as taxpayers have, is how is this all going to affect us? If we do some comprehensive immigration reform and allow people to stay here legally that have been here illegally, how's that going to affect us? What are the pros and cons from a taxpayer point of view of what's going to happen in the United States? I think that underlying all this is, again, as we've mentioned before, there's kind of this fear that, oh, all of a sudden we've got, which is principally Hispanic community, are now becoming a large voting bloc, and there are many, many more voters here. Among the 6 million children whose parents are undocumented, about 2 million of those are U.S. citizens who can vote. And so they're kind of concerned about this. Well, first of all, it's costing us right now, with over 5,000, somewhere but probably closer to about 6,000 children that are in foster care because parents have been deported. We spend about $900 to $1,200 per month per child that's in foster care. We have to pay for that. Now, some of those children are living with a cousin or an aunt or an uncle in that case, and sometimes that makes it less expensive, but nevertheless, they become foster parents and the expenses of those children. So from a taxpayer point of view, what's it costing us? Multiply 6,000 times about $1,200 a month, and you figure out what it's costing us money-wise, pure economic money-wise, to have those children in foster care. And that number is increasing and will increase simply because it's difficult for U.S. citizen children to thrive and live even in Mexico now, and further south it's even worse. Okay, what do we save by doing that? Well, we save those foster care fees, if nothing else, and we keep a parent here who's able to work and support his family so that we can get those children off of the welfare program and get them off welfare as well. They wouldn't qualify, the parents wouldn't qualify for welfare even though they're here working, but they're able to work and support their families. And you say, are there jobs for them? Statistically speaking, they're here, they're working, and I believe the studies will show that as far as impact on the job market, taking jobs away from others, is next to minimal, if non-existent. The Department of Labor would agree with us in that if you're suddenly granting work permits to people to remain in the United States that have already been here for a while, you're simply legitimizing a workplace event that's taking place anyway, and actually making it better for them and for the community, because now we know who they are, they have their driver's licenses, we have their fingerprints, we know who they are, where they are, and we're able to help them and their children adapt in the community so we don't have children here without parents. From a purely taxpayer point of view, the other thing we're trying to do is educate taxpayers, voters, and the general public out there that the suffering these children incur sometimes doesn't appear too much on the surface, but you can imagine, and you'll see a couple of photos of those children, the kind of suffering children are going through today if their parents undocumented, and day to day they wake up every morning, is my dad still here, is my mom still here, are they going to be able to be here another day with me? And they talk about going back to Mexico again. But again, they've heard the stories of what it's like to try to live in Mexico or further south, and those children are very fearful of going back to Mexico. And so the second aspect of this is the emotional, psychological damage we're doing to those children, the families, and consequently that spills over to their behavior, their thought processes in our community, how well they're doing in school. We have children who've done very well in school, they lose their parent, now they're having to go to work to try to help support their family, they're depressed, they're discouraged, so they start doing poorly in school. I've seen the same story over and over again. We'll have a child come into us, they've gone through elementary school, they're in high school now, mom or dad gets deported, gets in trouble with immigration, the child starts working, trying to go to school, pretty soon they're a high school dropout, and working full-time at a minimum wage job to take care of their younger siblings and other family members who are still here without a parent to support them. I think that with those two aspects of education, purely the economic impact, the benefits, and that's been very clear by the federal government, the agencies, the Independent Office of Management Budget has pointed out that legalizing these parents of these children is actually going to be an economic stimulus in the economy, creating a larger tax base and more economic opportunities. There simply aren't any statistics to support the fact of a negative economic impact by legalizing at least the parents of these 6 million U.S. citizen children in the United States.
On an ethical and kind of moral question, a lot of the concerns from taxpayers, not even just taxpayers, just citizens alone, people who commit crimes, DUIs, or are criminals in Mexico and come over here, how do we treat them? And is it fair for them to receive citizenship? Because our criminals here, we put them in prison, we remove them from society.
Exactly, and that's a viable concern. There may be people coming into the United States now that have committed serious crimes in a foreign country. They're coming here. How do we track them down? How do we treat those that they're wanting documents now that do have a conviction here? They have a DUI conviction, misdemeanors, sometimes felonies. That's clear in the reform immigration legislation that's proposed now. Individuals who have certain types of crimes, dangerous, repetitive crimes, that kind of thing, aren't going to qualify for benefits. And one of the nice things about beginning to document people and give them work permits is, number one, there's no promise that they're going to get legal permanent residency or citizenship. And in reality, John, some of those senators who have proposed reform legislation, who are demanding a pathway to citizenship, know very well that that legislation will never pass because of the pathway to citizenship. So they can appear to be supporting immigration reform to satisfy their Hispanic constituents and other minority constituents, but in reality, that'll never pass. We've made it very clear to Congress that our 6 million kids and many of our adult undocumented clients are not demanding a pathway to citizenship nor to legal permanent residency. They're not demanding that. They're only asking that they be allowed to be documented, to have a work permit, be legally present in the country, no immigration benefits, no welfare benefits, no tax benefits, just be allowed to be here legally with their children in this country, work, pay their taxes, go home to visit as freely as they can, and no pathway to citizenship. So anybody who's insisting that there must be a pathway to citizenship in immigration reform is simply not listening to the people they're trying to benefit, and they're not listening to the voters, because I think most voters are saying, hey, why should we reward these people with citizenship? And I think the majority of folks agree with that. And the individuals who would benefit from this agree with that. So the House now has the option of moving this piecemeal legislation. We've provided them with our suggestions. The Hispanic Caucus of Congressmen has also provided to the administration and the House a list of ways that the pressure can be taken out of a lot of the injustice and the damaging thing to families can be taken out of the system administratively and with legislation. And now they just need to move forward on that. And we in the public, and preferably more Anglos and others that understand this problem, need to communicate to Congress that, hey, look, we've got a problem here. We got a lot of kids without parents. There's a way to do this without giving them a pathway to citizenship to help solve this immediate problem that we've got in our community, and one that's getting worse every single day.
And one last question. Say one of these documented, if we do allow them to work here, and they're documented, do commit a serious crime, do we put them in the U.S. prison system, or do we deport them?
The current law, as it exists right now, indicates that they go into the state and federal prison system, and that's another debate: is why should we have a lot of illegal immigrants sitting here when we can just kick them out of the country and not occupying space? And that's a policy decision the administration can make, and the laws can make, and say, okay, if somebody's illegally and they're going to be deported for the rest of their lives anyway, why maintain them here and just go ahead and kick them out? Well, critics say, well, that person's just going to sneak back in again because the border is so porous right now. It's too easy to get back into the country. It is getting increasingly difficult to come into this country. There's no doubt about that. We have lots of our clients who have been deported who's saying, I want to come back. And we're telling them, look guys, it's not like the old days. It's not like in the early 2000s. It's not like even 2 years ago. It's much more difficult now. And they're getting more strict about enforcing the federal law against those that are trying to come back again. And so the word's getting out that it's much more difficult to come back into the country. But that is a constant balance. In other words, a guy gets a DUI, he's going to have to serve 30 days in jail, and maybe he's going to get deported afterwards. Why not just go ahead and deport him right now and get him out of the country? Arizona has passed what's called Proposition 100. And I don't think the voters, including me at the time I voted for it, understood the incredible economic impact it was going to have on our jail system in Maricopa County and the rest of the state, because we now have to house people that are charged with minor crimes in our prison system, sometimes for up to a year or so, because they're undocumented aliens. Then we hand them over to ICE. So now we have a major percentage of those that are housed in Durango and the other county jails are being held there because they're undocumented immigrants, not because they've committed a crime serious enough to deserve being there. So we maintain them there while their case kind of slowly works its way through the criminal system. Then we turn them over to ICE to have them deported. I believe that one of the things that's going to take a lot of pressure out of the system and the justice system is, if it would ever be possible, to amend Proposition 100 to say that wasn't our intent, to use jails and cells and prisons in Arizona to house illegal immigrants for the federal government while they're waiting for the criminal process to continue. For example, John, you could go to jail if you don't have documents and you're driving with a suspended license. You could wind up in jail for 90 to 120 to 6 months while you're waiting to get out of jail to be turned over to ICE and get deported.
Right.
You could have you could try to get into a bar with with your friend who's a U.S. citizen with a fake ID because you want to go in there and have some drinks and you're not 21 yet. If you're an undocumented immigrant, you get charged with forgery. You sit in jail for 6 to 8 months. You finally have your trial, and then you get deported again. Your buddy gets a misdemeanor and he's turned loose. So our bias against undocumented in our justice system in Arizona particularly creates a huge burden on the justice system and on the jail system that I don't think most of us understand or realize what it's all about.